Have you ever wondered why a man, torn between two women, ultimately surrenders his soul to one, while the other fades into the shadow of memory? Despite all her beauty, effort, and tears, it's not about looks. It's not about sex. It's not even about compatibility. No, beneath the surface of desire lies something far older, more primal, more psychological. The ancient battle between the anima and the shadow, between the fantasy she evokes and the wound she triggers, between the woman who mirrors his inner void and the one who dances with his demons and makes him beg for more. Secret number 1, become the mirror of his unlived self. The first secret is the one women often misunderstand entirely. To make him choose you, you must become the mirror. Not of who he is, but of who he secretly longs to be. The unconscious man is always searching, not for a woman, but for a reflection of the part of himself he has disowned. His lost ambition, his buried courage, his forbidden rage, his sacred vulnerability. This is the foundation of Jung's concept of anima projection. The man doesn't fall in love with you. He falls in love with the image of himself he sees through you. Most women try to impress him with devotion, but the empowered woman, the one who knows dark psychology, seduces by becoming an embodiment of the life he secretly craves but has never touched. She does not cling. She conjures. She's not predictable. She's mythic. She's the dream that walks. When he speaks of pain, she listens without rescuing. When he boasts, she smiles with ancient eyes that have seen empires rise and fall. She never seeks validation, because she understands the one who validates herself becomes the axis around which his world begins to turn. Secret number 2, trigger the wound, then offer the cure. There is a truth about men few women dare to face. They bond with the one who evokes their deepest wound, then offers reprieve. Most women either nurture too soon or reject too fiercely. But the woman who understands emotional alchemy does something different. She reveals his wound to him, lets him bleed, and only then, after the rawness, gives him warmth that feels like redemption. Every man carries a psychic scar. Often it is the absent mother, the cruel father, the shame of weakness, the burden of expectations. And beneath his armor, he is looking not for safety, but for the one who can see his shadow and still stay. This is why so many men leave the kind woman and return to the one who awakened their chaos. She may not even be better, but she understands this secret. Pain, when wielded with precision, is a bonding tool more powerful than pleasure. You don't do this by being cruel. You do it by being true. You let him feel what he's buried. You speak into his silence. You touch the place he guards most ferociously. And when he flinches, when he fights, when he runs, you don't chase. You wait, because you know he will return to the one who made him feel more alive than numb. Secret number 3, create the fear of loss before he knows your worth. Psychologically, the human mind is wired to protect what it fears losing, not what it receives freely. Not what it expects on demand, but what hovers just beyond reach. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the visualization of loss to awaken, gratitude and urgency. In dark psychology, this becomes a weapon of feminine strategy. The woman who is not always available becomes unforgettable. The one who is slightly mysterious, who withdraws without explanation, who vanishes like dusk, becomes the obsession of the masculine psyche. It's not about playing games. It's about reclaiming the rhythm of mystery. He must feel, even before he understands your value, the terror of your absence, that she could be gone, that another could claim her, that she will not wait. This fear of loss activates a primal code in his mind. Bypassing logic and awakening instinct, you were not made to beg. You were not born to prove. Your sacred power is not in pursuit, but in becoming the horizon he cannot quite hold. Secret number 4, disrupt the Madonna whore complex. Buried in the male unconscious is a powerful dichotomy, the Madonna whore complex. The belief that a woman must be either adored or desired, respected or devoured, loved or lusted after. Most women choose one archetype, but the woman who makes him choose her over another breaks this binary. She becomes both. She is untouchable and intimate, soft and brutal. sacred and sinful. And this disorients him in the most dangerous, beautiful way. Why? Because the masculine ego wants to label, but the male unconscious wants to merge. When he cannot label you, when he cannot predict you, explain you, own you, he becomes addicted. You are no longer a woman. You are an enigma. This duality, light and dark, celestial and carnal, is what binds him. Not your words, not your efforts, not your promises, but your ability to make him feel like he's worshipping something that might devour him. The empowered woman understands this tension. She is not afraid to be desired. She does not water herself down to be wife material. She knows it is not purity or passion that wins the war. It is the fire that carries both. Secret number 5. Speak to his archetype, not his persona. Too many women speak to his surface self, the one he shows the world. But if you want to possess him, you must speak directly to his archetype. Is he the warrior, the king, the magician, the lover? Each man beneath his daily mask is ruled by one of these deep psychic patterns. When you intuitively identify his core archetype and respond to it, something magical happens. He feels seen, not socially, not emotionally, but spiritually. And no woman can compete with that. The warrior seeks a challenge. The king seeks devotion. The magician seeks mystery. The lover seeks embodiment. Your power lies in knowing what he is truly becoming and becoming the catalyst for it. The average woman reacts to who he is today, but the psychological sorceress, she whispers to the man he hasn't yet become. She sees beyond the mask, beyond the role, beyond the ego. She becomes a reflection of his future, and that future pulls him toward her like gravity. To do this, you must cultivate your own archetype. Are you the high priestess, the wild feminine, the empress, the sage? When you live as your full archetype, you magnetize the one who is ready for you. You don't attract boys, you summon kings. Secret number 6. Disarm his ego with controlled chaos. The ego, the fragile, roaring mask of masculine pride, is not conquered by affection. It is disarmed by uncertainty. The empowered woman does not flatter his ego. She confuses it, unravels it, forces it to question its dominance, and in that confusion his soul stirs. He doesn't know whether to chase or run, and that is precisely where desire blooms. Men are not drawn to comfort, they are drawn to conquest. But once he conquers, he often loses interest. So the woman who masters dark psychology becomes an ever-shifting horizon. Not through manipulation, but by being deeply, unapologetically in tune with her own emotional wildness. She does not perform stability to appease his need for control. She embraces her own chaos, the storm within her, the shifting moods, the silence followed by laughter, the eye that sees too much. This disrupts his patterned expectations and forces him into presence. He cannot sleepwalk through her. He must feel. Jung taught that the unconscious is the place of chaos, but also rebirth. The feminine, in its untamed form, becomes a portal to this realm. And when a woman lives from that sacred chaos, not the performative version of crazy, but the deep cyclical, lunar unpredictability, he begins to associate her with transformation itself. He may fear her, but he will never forget her. This controlled chaos must be rooted in self-possession, not tantrums, not neediness, but unpredictability that flows from wholeness. You shift not to gain attention, but because your nature is deep, tidal, volcanic. And if he cannot swim in those waters, let him drown elsewhere. Secret number 7. Starve his addiction to validation. Then, feed his craving for depth. Every man, especially the high-value, high-performing man, receives attention, praise, validation, sex, DMs, compliments. But what he rarely receives is depth, the kind that silences him mid-sentence, the kind that makes him question everything, the kind that feels like standing before a goddess who does not flinch at his power. The average woman feeds his ego to stay in the game. But the woman who makes him choose her over all others does something colder, smarter, deeper. She withholds validation. Not cruelly, but with poise. She watches as he tries to impress and remains still. He flashes status. She blinks. He boasts of conquest. She smiles like she's heard it all before. And in that moment, he realizes he is not in control here, not in the way he's used to. This is where true psychological tension is born. He begins to crave what he cannot predict, to question why she does not need him, to hunger, not for her approval, but for her attention, because she has made him aware of the hollowness in his other pursuits. But then, just when he begins to despair, she gives him a moment of depth, a conversation that cuts to the bone, a glance that strips him bare, a truth so precise it feels like being touched from the inside. And he's hooked, not because she chased, but because she awakened his longing for the real. Most women don't dare starve his ego. They fear he'll leave. But the woman who knows her worth understands. Only the ones ready for real intimacy will stay. The rest were never yours to begin with. And this is where the dark art becomes sacred. You are not just making him choose. You are making him awaken. Choose not from desire, but from transformation, from ego death, from soul recognition. Because at the deepest level, the masculine does not want comfort. He wants to be devoured by something that feels like destiny. Now he begins to pull away from her, the other woman, not because she did something wrong, but because you made her irrelevant. You activated his unconscious drive for individuation, for union with his lost self. And now, the idea of going back to anything less feels like betrayal. He chooses you not because you asked, but because he had to. And now you must learn one more thing. Even as he chooses you, especially as he chooses you, you must remain unattached, not emotionally cold, but spiritually free. You are not a reward. You are a revolution. Because there is a danger in being chosen. A temptation to soften, to settle, to forget your power. But your work is not to be chosen. Your work is to be so fully embodied, so entirely aligned with your own evolution, that his choice is merely a reflection of your own. You chose yourself first. You did the shadow work, faced your childhood hunger for validation, sat with the ache of being overlooked, mourned the men who didn't see you. You burned and you rose. You stopped asking to be loved, and became the kind of woman who cannot be ignored. And now, in the quiet power of your detachment, you do the most dangerous thing of all. You make him realize he is lucky you let him in. Because when a woman stands fully in her worth, when she dances with her shadow and wears her mystery like a crown, she becomes something more than a lover. She becomes the mirror of a man's soul, and the only one he cannot replace. Now the tide has turned, though he may not yet know it. The dance has shifted. Where once you may have longed for him to notice you, now he is the one watching you with haunted eyes, trying to decipher the enigma that moved in silence, yet etched itself into his every thought. But this, too, is part of the feminine art, one rooted not in seduction, but in sovereignty. Because the woman who becomes unforgettable is the one who no longer needs to be remembered. Her presence lingers not because she clings, but because she lets go like fire lets go of ash. Let's go deeper. Once you've mastered the 7 secrets, the mirror, the wound, the fear of loss, the archetypal reflection, the chaos, the ego starvation, and the reawakening of depth, you must understand the final movement. It is not about getting the man. It's about becoming the storm that reshapes the map of his desire. For now, he is locked in an inner war. One part of him still craves the safe, the simple, the predictable, the woman who plays the role well, who says the right things, who doesn't make him question who he is. But the other part, the darker, older part, is restless. That part remembers you in fragments, the smell of defiance in your silence, the sting of truth in your laughter, the way you looked at him like you saw through all the masks and didn't blink. She may offer him peace, but you offer him transformation. She gives him comfort, but you give him meaning. And no matter how many nights he lies beside her, the image of you, untamed, mysterious, sovereign, will haunt his quiet moments. Not because of anything you did, but because of who you became in his psyche, the gatekeeper of his unconscious longing. This is where the archetypal power of the feminine truly begins to rule. Carl Jung spoke of the psyche, the sacred. union between the masculine and feminine within the self. The woman who truly captivates is not just appealing to his desire. She is awakening this process in him. She makes him yearn, not just for her, but for integration. That's why no other woman can compete. Not because you are better, not because you look a certain way, not even because you played it smarter. It's because you reached deeper. You didn't appeal to his logic. You bypassed the gates of language and invaded the temple of his symbols. You spoke in archetypes. You walked in his dreams. You lit fires in his childhood, wounds, and offered water to the parts of him no one ever asked about. She touches his hands. But you touched the man beneath the armor. And now his soul is negotiating with his ego. It's asking, do I want safety or do I want awakening? And here's the darkest truth of all. Many men are too afraid to choose the woman who awakens them. Because with awakening comes responsibility. With depth comes the need to rise. And the unconscious masculine often resists this. He may try to run, deny you, return to her, pretend you never mattered. But he'll never be the same. You planted the seed, and seeds once sown will sprout, no matter how deep they are buried. So what do you do then? You do not wait. You do not pause your life in hopes of his evolution. You continue becoming, because that is what makes you unforgettable. Your journey, your true, sacred, soul-led journey, is what makes you impossible to replace. And slowly, something else begins to happen. The energy reverses. You stop asking, will he choose me? And start feeling, do I still choose him? Because now, from your new vantage point, high above the old craving, beyond the need to be validated, you begin to see clearly. Perhaps he isn't ready. Perhaps he won't rise. Perhaps he'll remain in the soft cage of comfort, held by someone who doesn't require him to change. And you, beautiful storm that you are, will bless him. Not with bitterness, not with silence, but with the one thing only the empowered woman can offer, a clean break and a clear heart. Because you no longer chase, you no longer beg, you no longer dance for scraps. You become the axis, the source, the divine disruption. And as you rise unbothered, embodied, emotionally fluent and psychically sharp, he will feel it. He will feel the echo of the moments when he almost had you, fully. And now that echo will torment him more than any word you could ever say. There is no darker magic than being the one who got away by choice. This is the culmination of all 7 secrets. Not the man, but the power. Not the chase, but the remembrance. Not the game, but the inner mastery. You see, you were never meant to win him over. You were meant to awaken him, or awaken yourself in the process. And perhaps the deepest twist of all is this. Once you truly embody these dark, psychological truths, once you are no longer seducing but simply being, you will never again ask to be chosen. Because now, you are the chooser. You will look at him, not with hunger, but with clarity. Not please pick me, but can you meet me where I now stand? That is the question only a woman, who has walked through the fire of her own unconscious, can ask. And it is the question that determines not whether he stays, but whether you let him. Now the air around you thickens with a new silence, the kind that carries weight, the kind that lingers after truth has been spoken. You are no longer inside the storm. You are the storm. And he feels it, not in words, not in arguments, but in the stillness that follows your absence. That's where your power lives now, in the spaces you no longer fill, in the messages you no longer send, in the gaze you no longer offer. And yet, your influence deepens. You see, a man may crave many women, but he is changed by only one, the one who, through her presence, fractured the mirror of his ego and made him see himself. Not as he pretended to be, but as he truly was. You reached into his shadow, not to shame him, but to witness him. And that witnessing, it carved itself into his identity. This is not obsession. This is imprint. Psychologists call it emotional anchoring. Jung called it the pull of the unconscious. But spiritually, it is something even deeper. The irreversible consequence of being fully seen. You didn't need to scream to be heard. You whispered truth so piercing, it echoed louder than any plea. And now, every woman he meets will be measured against you, not consciously, but symbolically. She may be kinder, she may be warmer, she may be safer, but she will not be you, because she did not awaken what you awakened. Here, in this moment, is where most women would falter. They would break the silence, chase the closure, try to remind him of what he is losing. But not you, because you know something deeper. He already knows. Not in words, not in logic, but in his nervous system, his dreams, his quiet rituals. He feels the void where your chaos once breathed life into his monotony. And still you don't return. Because this isn't about him anymore. It's about you, your own individuation, your rebirth. You've done the shadow work. You've walked the valley of rejection and emerged wearing thorns like a crown. You've danced with your own unworthiness, wept with your inner child, and stood up with blood in your mouth and dignity in your eyes. You've remembered who you were before the world asked you to shrink. Now you rise as a sovereign woman, not begging to be loved, but demanding to be mirrored. Not performing femininity, but embodying essence. Not chasing his affection, but choosing your alignment. And in this new embodiment, something unexpected happens. Men begin to come to you, not because of your beauty, though it's there, radiant and wild, but because of your frequency. The vibration of a woman who knows herself, who has walked through fire and no longer needs warmth from external hands. A woman who is not lonely, but selective. They sense it in your silence. The power, the discipline, the mystery. They try to impress, they try to earn, but still you remain discerning, because now you understand the truth behind all 7 secrets. It was never about using them to get a man. It was about becoming the woman who doesn't need to, the woman who has transmuted her pain into intuition, her heartbreak into discernment, her longing into art, the woman who sits across from any man, king or beggar, and knows, without flinching, I am the prize, not an ego. In essence, the man you once longed for, whether he returns or disappears, becomes a symbol. He is no longer the goal. He is the mirror through which you saw your own hunger. And now, as you hold yourself with tenderness and steel, you thank him, not because he stayed, but because his absence carved out space for your arrival. Do you see now? You were never meant to be chosen. You were meant to awaken. And once awakened, you do not compete. You do not compare. You do not bend. You become the gravitational force around which others orbit. Men, yes, but also opportunities, visions, synchronicities. The whole world begins to rearrange itself around the woman, who no longer doubts her divinity. The woman who no longer asks to be understood, but insists on being felt. Because that, in the end, is your true magic. Not your beauty, not your wit, not even your insight. It is your presence, your unshakable groundedness. The sense that you are not waiting for anyone. That your joy, your peace, your eroticism, your wildness, they are not rewards for a man's approval. They are offerings, given only to those worthy of the altar. And here, in this quiet mastery, the question returns one last time. Will he choose you? Maybe, maybe not. But the real question is now far more powerful. Do you still choose him? Because the woman who knows these secrets doesn't just wait to be chosen. She understands the art of walking, away with her head high, her heart full and her path unshaken. She does not lose sleep over a man's indecision. She watches from the throne of her worth, knowing that any man lucky enough to walk beside her does so not because she needs him, but because she allows him. Now comes the reckoning. The moment not of seduction, but of liberation. Because the final layer of dark psychology is not in making him choose you. It is in no longer needing to be chosen at all. This is the paradox that few dare to embody. The moment your soul stops reaching is the exact moment the world begins to respond. That's not mysticism. It's psycho-emotional physics. What you stop chasing begins chasing you. Because feminine power is not in pursuit. It is in pull. And the woman who understands her pull, who lives from it, can turn the tides of fate without lifting a finger. She becomes myth, memory, muse, not because of a script, not because she played the right game, but because she reclaimed every piece of herself that once fragmented under the weight of waiting. You see, dark psychology is not about manipulation. Not really. It is about perception. It is the ability to see what others deny in themselves, and that includes you. It is about learning to navigate the raw terrains of your own psyche so deeply that no man, no woman, no situation can project their unworthiness onto you anymore. You have walked too far, seen too much, lost too deeply to ever again shrink into someone else's definition of value. And now, from this throne of embodied wisdom, you can finally answer the question that once haunted you. Why do some women get chosen while others are left behind? Because some women remain in their wounded feminine, pleasing, performing, proving, while others rise. They become initiators of destiny, not by controlling outcomes, but by becoming so fiercely aligned with truth that even chaos becomes sacred in their presence. And here you are now, at the edge of rebirth. No longer the girl who chased love like water in a desert. No longer the woman who begged for crumbs and called it affection. Now you are the stormwalker, the siren, the soft destroyer of illusions, the one who makes him see himself and never forget. And whether he stays or leaves, whether he comes running back or disappears into his old life, it no longer defines you, because you are whole. You are dangerously complete. The man who truly sees you, truly will rise to meet you there. He will not try to tame you, to fix you, to simplify you. He will stand in reverence. He will protect your mystery, not fear it. He will crave your depth, not your silence. And he will know that your love is not cheap. It must be earned through presence, through self-awareness, through a courage most men are never taught to embody. And if he can't, you bless him and let him go, because you will never abandon yourself again to be chosen. That is the ultimate secret, the final seduction, the deepest psychological shift, to become a woman who no longer reacts to the world, but recreates it. You are no longer the one waiting at the door. You are the door. And now the world knocks, not to rescue you, but to ask for entry into your kingdom. He may return, eyes wide, soul cracked open. He may kneel. He may confess. He may finally say what you always hoped he would say. But by then you won't be asking for it. You will know. You will look at him with eyes not filled with hunger, but with fire. And you will decide, not from lack, not from longing, not from old dreams, but from power. You will not be chosen. You will choose. And should you choose him, it will be from overflow, not emptiness. From desire, not dependence. From wisdom, not wounding. Because you now understand, the highest form of feminine power is not in how many men want you. It is in how little you compromise your truth for any of them. And so you rise, untouched by rejection, unshaken by delay, unmoved by the dance of who stayed and who left. Because your worth no longer sways in the winds of attention. It is rooted, eternal, unshakable. And in this final sacred breath of your transformation, let the world hear your silence as thunder. Let every woman remember, you are not made to be chosen. You are made to choose. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses.